If you've ever thought about buying a home in Oregon, but you're outside of the state and you're a little bit unsure about how to go about it, especially if you're considering sight unseen, this video is for you. We've helped a lot of people do just that, relocate to Oregon, particularly sight unseen. And if you want to know how we do it, all the steps, stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, Living in Oregon. I'm your host, Seth Marchant, licensed real estate broker in the state of Oregon and Washington. Or if you're new to this channel, we've got over 100 videos showing you what it's like to live in Oregon, mostly focusing around the Portland, Vancouver metropolitan area. Lots of videos driving you around neighborhoods, introducing you to new areas, weighing in on things like pros and cons. There's also another gentleman on this channel named Paul Klim that does these videos, so you get a couple different perspectives. We were both born and raised in this area, but you get a couple different perspectives from us on this channel. So if you want to see more videos like that about what it's like to live in Oregon, specifically around the Portland metropolitan area, make sure and subscribe to this channel. We've helped a lot of people relocate from outside of the state. And today I want to talk to you about what that actually looks like for people that are buying sight unseen. If you've ever wondered about it, we're getting more and more people that are doing that. Really kicked off since lockdowns around 2020. Virtual tours became very, very popular when we had lockdowns and people were unable to tour homes. So you started seeing a lot more virtual tours, and those are helpful. But they're not always going to paint the full picture. So I'll get into risks and process in just a moment, but I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about what that looks like initially for somebody that's trying to buy a home sight unseen, oftentimes from way outside of the area, like California, for example, or just somewhere outside of the state. Those virtual tours and pictures can only go so far. So typically the way we are facilitating this as real estate brokers for our clients is we will go to the property and do a virtual Zoom tour. So we'll get you on the phone with us as we walk around the property. It's great if you can screen record that. If you can't, we can make you an additional video as well. We all know that when you look at those pictures online on Zillow, redfinrealtor.com, wherever you're shopping online at houses, the dimensions, those wide angle lenses sometimes make rooms look a little bit bigger than they actually are. So actually having us to be there in person with you, we can even bring out a measuring tape if you want, however it's going to give you an idea of the actual dimensions of the property. That's what we'll do. And beyond that, oftentimes too, we're going through the neighborhood. We can make you a driving video of the neighborhood. Of course, you can check Google Street View. That's what a lot of people do, but oftentimes those images aren't up to date. So we're happy to drive around and give you a driving video of the neighborhood. We can do drone footage as well. And oftentimes this can actually really come into play for people, because one thing that of course you're not going to be able to infer online just going through maybe Google Street Maps or looking at photos. Sometimes there's just going to be something that you might not have thought of. Smells is a big one too. We're going to give it a sniff test, but everybody has a different nose and a different sense of smell. So some of the common smells that you might encounter here around the Portland metropolitan area, of course, we have a lot of moisture, so mold can be a thing. The other common smell is going to be pets. So giving it the sniff test is also part of what we're going to do. And then just maybe pointing out anything else that you might not have been able to see or infer from just doing your investigations online, which the more you can do, the better. But actually having us go out there, take a look for ourselves, make a video, get on a call with you, get on a Zoom or some sort of FaceTime with you where we can actually be there in person, ask us questions. We can walk around, look at things just like a real tour. That's going to make a lot of difference. Some people are relying on those virtual tours and photos, but oftentimes there's going to be surprises. You definitely don't just want to be relying on the images and the virtual tours that you see online. And then for you people, like I mentioned, this video hopefully will be helpful for people that maybe are just relocating but not buying sight unseen. Some people will do some sort of hybrid, In other words, they'll be outside of the States, they'll do a virtual tour with us on a Zoom call, and if everything looks good, they'll last second book a flight and fly out here to make sure the property looks good themselves. Not everybody can do that, of course. If you can do that, great, it is very helpful. We are still in a competitive market, so it's not like things can't change in between the time that we do our tour and you book a flight, 24 hours, whatever that is. So there is always that risk as well. But we have worked with a lot of people that have done that and done it successfully. And of course, the other alternative is simply just to move here and then to rent and then to shop around while you're renting. That works too. If you're looking at the rental market online, or if you've heard things about the rental market, yes, it is constrained like the home sale market. So it is a little bit tough, but if you're not too selective, you're going to be able to find something. It might not be too inexpensive. In other words, it might be expensive, but you'll definitely be able to find something if you're not too selective. Most people want to avoid essentially moving twice. If you're going to move somewhere and rent, that means you're probably going to have to put all of your stuff in storage or some combination of those things. And then once you find a home, then you're moving twice. So a lot of people avoid that if they can, and that ties into the next thing I want to talk about, which is contingency offers. Wasn't really a thing when the market was really competitive in 2020, 2021, even 2022. Sellers weren't really accepting offers that were contingent upon the sale of the buyer's home, simply because they didn't have to. There were too many other buyers to choose from that weren't contingent. But now that the market's a little bit more balanced, it still does favor the sellers a little bit, but we are seeing a lot more contingent offers actually working. So if you want to work a deal contingent where you need to sell your home, say in California, and then write an offer on a home in Portland, we've done that a lot as well. We'll coordinate that with your listing agent at home. In fact, we're going to need to probably be in touch with that person to work out dates and logistics. And if you don't have a listing agent too, I've helped a lot of our clients find and vet a listing agent. Our clients have always been happy with the listing agent that I've found. I'm pretty good at vetting other agents, so I can help you with that as well. But just know that contingencies are also a possibility if that's something that you're trying to do in 2024. We expect that to be the case in 25 and 26. We don't expect it to get a whole lot more competitive. Rates are going to go down. They have been going down. Although if you've been following very closely and you're watching this video shortly after it comes out, you'll know that rates actually sort of have gone up recently. This has confused a few realtors because rates actually, the Fed drop that happened recently was priced in a few months ago. So rates actually started coming down a few months ago. And it's not just based on the Fed, it's also based on the jobs report in the 10-year, which is the reason for rates recently going back up. But anyways, we do expect rates to slowly go down over the next year. I don't really expect it to make the market. I don't think it's going to make enough of a dent to where the market's going to get a whole lot more competitive. So if you're thinking of going contingent in the next year or so, I think you're probably going to be fine. It's probably not going to be a whole lot different than the market right now. But here's the other caveat about buying a home sight unseen. A savvy listing agent is going to advise their clients that there are risks with accepting an offer sight unseen. And so first of all, how are they even going to know that it's sight unseen? Well, can be a couple things. Sometimes a listing agent is required to accompany us when we tour the home. So sometimes they'll be there. It's not very common under 7 figures, but once it gets up there past 7 figures, it's going to become more common. Also, listening and monitoring devices, cameras, those are very common in this day and age, and sellers are checking those things. So they're going to look at who toured the house. They might even look at the vehicle that you're driving in and make some sort of judgment like that, especially depending on the price point. And then sometimes agents, very savvy agents, if they have a reason to believe, sometimes they'll just ask, hey, did the buyer actually tour this home? And the reason why they're going to want to know that is because in Oregon, with our contingencies, it's not that difficult in the beginning with the inspection period for a buyer to cancel a contract and get their earnest money back. And that's going to be the fear for the sellers, because for a seller, when you sell your house, when you put your house on the market and then you accept an offer and you go pending, and people that are following your house, they see that on Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, they see your address, your house, because they're getting updates, notifications, they see you went pending, and then a short time later, they see that you're back on the market, you're not pending any longer. that always gives buyers that were interested somewhat of a negative sentiment, because they always think that, well, what did this other buyer see that I didn't, that they caused them to cancel the contract? So effectively, having your house go under contract and have to come back to the market is almost always going to devalue it to some degree. So there's going to be a lot of apprehension for sellers, or a savvy seller agent that's advising their seller to accept an offer that they feel might not be very strong and that could potentially cancel. And that is going to be the case with a lot of sight unseen offers. So the agents that have a lot of experience probably know this, maybe have been burned in the past. I can think about a house that I represented a buyer on a couple years ago, and the house had been under contract and had come back to the market. So just like I mentioned a moment ago, this is what we do. We're going to ask, why did this house go under contract and fall out of contract and now it's back on the market? And the explanation for this particular house was that they had accepted an offer sight unseen. The buyer flew out for the inspection period and saw that the house had a power line running from the roof to a power pole, which is not uncommon here in Oregon, probably not uncommon where you're at in a lot of places throughout the country. There are places, though, that we don't have power poles and the power runs underground. Apparently, this buyer must have been coming from a place like that, because seeing a power line run from a power pole to their roof and just having this big, I guess, wire just irked them enough that that they didn't want to buy the house, so that they canceled the contract. I have had buyers that aren't used to that, because sometimes you will see some pretty low hanging wires, especially if you're a tall person, you know, low enough to where you almost jump up and grab one of those wires. So I understand the apprehension sometimes if you're not used to that, but it's the little things that you can't see from just looking at those listing photos online. Think of another story of a buyer that was interested in a house, and they didn't realize that there was a Burger King nearby, and they hate Burger King. So, and the Burger King was close enough to the house to where you could smell the Burger King. Just wasn't something that they ever expected or anticipated or were even really kind of looking for. But once they got there and saw the house and had that smell, then they realized, no, not going to work for me. So savvy agents, listing agents will know that, and they will advise their sellers on that. And so that can be potentially an uphill battle that we may fight in getting an offer accepted sight unseen. Now, we do have tools to combat that and to make the seller feel at ease, but you as a buyer should be aware that that's a thing. So when we're going out, we're going to do our best job to build a relationship. If we don't have one already with a listing agent, make them feel very comfortable with us and you, the buyer, and our process and all of that. So communication is very important. I'd like to think that if you're watching this video, and especially still watching it at this point, because I can be a little bit long-winded, that I have at least decent communication. You understand that I'm going to use that with the listing agent, and we're going to do everything we can to get what, you know, is a little bit of an unconventional deal done. Okay, so how about, what are some of the risks? What are some of the things to be on the lookout for? I mentioned size. I think that's probably the biggest one. When we're out touring homes with buyers, that's probably one of the #1 comments is, this backyard or this room isn't quite the same size that I expected based on what I saw online. So that's a big thing that we're looking for, is size. As a buyer, that's always going to be a risk for you. Like I said, we can take measurements for you if you really want to know. And sometimes that's going to come into play. There's sometimes things that buyers don't consider. A big one that I see these days, I see a lot of people that have large TVs. You know, where are you going to put that 70-inch TV? Because sometimes there's just not places to fit a TV like that, especially if you're trying not to put your TV over your fireplace, which all the interior designers like to say is such a big faux pas these days. A lot of dwellings, a lot of houses don't have space for a massive TV other than over the fireplace. So we're also going to be looking out for little things like that. Other risks that you might take into consideration that we'll be on the lookout for is just neighbors, barking dogs. Again, these are things that you're just not going to be able to infer just through a virtual tour. So we're typically, even if you don't ask us to, if you don't request a video, we're going to walk the neighborhood. We're going to look out for anything that we think that might be a red flag to our specific buyer. Now, how about the process? So we're going to start with a Zoom call like we do with most of our buyers that are starting from outside of the area, that are relocating, regardless if you're buying sight unseen. Really going to dig into your needs and your wants, and it can really help for you to ask yourself some of these questions going into the call. The better we can understand what you're looking for, and the better you can communicate that to us, the more efficient this whole entire process is going to be. So like when we ask you about what type of property that you're looking for, and you say like a 4-bed, 2.5 bath, however many square feet, rather than some of those details, if you're buying sight unseen, really digging into some of the stuff like I mentioned about the TV just now, those little details that you might not have thought of otherwise, trying to work those out in advance of our call so we can better understand what you're looking for is really going to help. And organization is always going to be a plus. So spreadsheets, clipboards, documents, using AI tools. And then right after our Zoom call, we're typically going to start an email chain. You may have already been looking at properties online. You can send those to us so we can see what you're looking at, and we'll gather more information. Maybe if there's disclosures available for the properties, we can get those for you. And then we'll send you some properties. And then we'll create a list of properties, a running list. We'll narrow down or expand. And as we go along, whether you're a couple weeks out from moving or a couple months, we'll keep this running list going. And then once it comes time for you to actually take the next steps and for us to start touring homes, we'll already have a list going. We'll already have an idea of the market too. People already do this. They already shop online. They already look at homes and save homes and get notifications for homes. They've been doing that for a long time, but if you haven't done that, it really helps to do that because it gives you an idea of the market. It really helps when you see a home hit the market that meets all of your criteria to follow that home and then see how quickly it goes pending. Is it going pending in 3 days? Is it going pending in 2 months? And when you do that exercise over and over, dozens of times, maybe 100 times for people that are shopping online for years, it really gives you a better sense of the market. So that way, when it comes time for us to tour a home, write an offer, we can be much more decisive, which really helps in this competitive market. We can have a sense as to how quickly do we think this home might get an offer, because we've seen in the past history how quickly these homes typically go under contract, or how long might it take for this home to get an offer, and how much leverage can we use against that seller. And then so once we've done our Zoom tour, we've got emails going, we've looked at properties online, we want to cover contracts too. We'll typically have a separate call to go over our contracts. If you've looked at real estate contracts in other states, it's probably similar, but there are always some slight variations, and we always want to cover those slight variations. Don't want there to be any surprises from what you've done in the past. And the biggest thing to know with the contracts is there's going to be a home inspection. People aren't waiving home inspections these days. That's not something that you need to do to be competitive, even in the most competitive situations. So biggest thing for you buying sight unseen, there will be a home inspection in which you get to pick the home inspector, and that home inspector is going to be very thorough. We typically give suggestions to our buyers, home inspectors we've worked with before. We're not going to pick the inspector for you, conflict of interest, we can't do that, but we can suggest inspectors to you. And in working with ones that we worked with before, it's a little bit more of a streamlined relationship, but that person is going to give you a full report. Typically, they're going to, if you'd like, do your own Zoom call recap with the inspector post-inspection. If you can fly out here for the inspection, that's great. The majority of the time, depends on the house, of course, should be case by case, but just on average, the majority of the time, for the buyer, there's a lot of standing around and really not much going on. The one reason why it is nice to be there for an inspection is occasionally the inspector will find something really big or really concerning, and they'd like you to just be there in person, and they'll stop what they're doing. They'll come find me because I'll be at the home inspection. So they'll come find me wherever I'm at and say, hey, come look at this. I want you to look at this, because it's just, there's some things that are a little bit easier to look at in person than over a video or a photo. So the home inspection is going to typically be like a 7 to 10 day period. That's part of the contract, but you're going to have a very good sense after that home is inspected of all of the problems, all the things that it needs. And most of the home inspectors that we work with, that we suggest, are going to make themselves available to you later. So after you have some time to digest the report, you might have some questions the next day, maybe even the next week. Some inspectors they'll let you call them like a year later with a question or something like that. So just know that you're going to be able to feel very comfortable after that home inspection, knowing the condition of the home. And if you have any questions, those questions are definitely going to get answered. Now, if you need any additional resources about crime, school, things like cost of living, we can provide you with tools too. We're pretty much going to assist with everything that you need, including if you need help with movers, getting set up with utilities. From start to finish, we will help you with everything that it takes to relocate, and especially buying sight unseen. So if you have more questions about that, I invite you to call me, text me, email me. You can hit that QR code if you are watching from TV. That'll take you to our website where you can find all of our contact information and more. And of course, if you want to see more videos about what it's like to live in Oregon, a lot of the videos, like I mentioned at the beginning, they're really showing you the area. They're not so boring like this one, talking about the whole nuts and bolts, the details of buying a home. So if you really want to get a better feel for what it's like to live here and what it looks like here, make sure and subscribe to this channel. And if this video helped, give me a thumbs up, hit the like button, lets me know I'm doing a good job. Feel free to leave comments as you always do. We'll reply back. Let me know if you've ever thought about buying a home sight unseen. Maybe what are some of your apprehensions? Anything I didn't cover in this video, questions, please put them in the comments. And until next time, take care, everyone.